We're talking basic nutrition. We'll probably do a more advanced nutrition video in the future, but right now we're just going to cover the fundamentals, the basics that you should probably know. So when we break down food into three macronutrient categories, protein, fats, and carbohydrates, we can actually manipulate these three different macronutrients in order to see different goals and to benefit in different ways. If we're trying to build strength, if we're trying to run a marathon, there's going to be different levels or different amounts of each macronutrient that we're going to want to eat on a day-to-day basis that in order to reach our goals. Not the same diet isn't going to work the same for every single different type of athlete. We're going to start with protein. So protein is the building block for muscle. Eating protein supplies your body with amino acids, and these amino acids are going to be what builds new muscle, basically. All right, it's a lot more complicated than that, but again, we're just going to cover basics. Eating protein will help you build muscle so long as, again, you're training effectively, because they go hand in hand. There's that old saying that nutrition is 70% of the battle and exercise is about 30%, and I agree. With a poor diet, you can exercise all you want and you're not going to see any benefit. And on the other hand, I've seen a lot of people who don't necessarily exercise more than they used to, but they clean up their eating, and it goes a long way. They see dramatic results just by changing their nutrition. All right. When we're talking about protein, the number one most important part, as far as I'm concerned, is the quality of the protein that you're getting. Okay, so that doesn't mean going to McDonald's, eating 3 Big Macs, and saying I got my protein requirements for the day. Don't be going to KFC. Yeah, sure, you're eating a lot of chicken, but it's fried. It's poor quality protein. We want lean beef. We want seafood. We want poultry. You know what? There's a lot of other alternatives as well. It doesn't just come down to meat. Having a well-balanced amount of protein intake is actually going to be much better for us. So eating soy, different types of legumes like lentils, you can actually get protein from some nuts and some grains. As much as quality is important, getting a variety of different protein sources is also going to be key. So some days I don't even eat meat. I live in a vegetarian household. Some days I get all my protein from tofu or soy or peanut butter. You got to be careful with the nuts because there are lots of fat. There is a lot of fat involved with nuts as well. But getting a variety of different protein sources is going to be much better than just eating, skinless, boneless chicken breast all day long, like your bodybuilders that you see on Instagram or whatever. The reason for this is you get different amino acids from different sources of protein. So I'm not going to go too much into it, but you may have some amino acids that are more readily available in lentils that aren't going to be found in, your steak that your mom cooked for dinner. Getting a different variety will sort of provide you with all the different amino acids, and it'll supply your body with everything it needs in order to build the most quality muscle it can. Some examples of protein you're getting protein from food is a can of tuna is my number one. You can get like 35 grams of protein from one can of tuna, and it's very low calorie, and there's virtually nothing else in there. It's just tuna. It's literally, as far as I'm concerned, I call my tuna protein in a can. If you don't like tuna, then it's kind of tough to eat because it does have that very fishy taste. But like if you do like tuna, you're gonna benefit from eating some tuna. I don't eat 5 cans of tuna a day because there's some issues with the mercury content of tuna. You don't want to accumulate a bunch of mercury in your system, so careful on the intake. But tuna is a great source of protein. Eggs, you can get like 7 to 8 grams of protein from one large egg. So you have a 3-egg omelet for breakfast, you're breaking 20 grams of protein right there. You get a 4-ounce salmon fillet tossed on the grill, you get another 20 grams of protein. I can't think of off the top of my head how much protein is coming in tuna and soy. I don't really look at those packages. But again, a good amount of tofu in a stir fry for dinner is going to give you a pretty good protein hit. Now, if you don't have sources of protein readily available, there is the option for protein shakes. I try to avoid supplementing protein as much as I can. As far as I'm concerned, getting it through diet is more than doable, but also going to be better for you because these are going to be more natural sources of protein. I'm not necessarily quoting research on this, but I just figured that if it's artificially made as in a protein shake, I just kind of question the absorbability in the body compared to eating some lentils or some peanut butter. As far as protein ingestion, your sensitivity to protein actually is highest like immediately after a workout, and it sort of drops down as you go, as time goes on from your workout. So getting your protein in as soon as you can after a workout is typically going to benefit you. People call this the anabolic window. You know, it's where you want to eat your protein in order to build as much muscle as you can. But I mean, it's not really like a set time. You know, it's a half an hour later, boom, you eat protein, you're not going to build muscle. It's not like that. It will go down a little bit through time. However, if you have to wait an hour before you can actually eat protein, it's not going to kill you. Eat your protein regardless. Just don't worry so much about the time, but try to get it as close to your workout as you can. When we talk about carbohydrates, my number one rule is there's no such thing as too many vegetables. Now, if I say the word carbohydrates, I'm going to guess that crackers or goldfish or bread or bagels comes to mind, and if they do, we sort of need to change the way you're thinking. Effective carbohydrate intake incorporates a lot of vegetables and some fruits as well. Now, we do need to be careful with the timing of fruit intake because there are also, as much as they're natural sugars, there is a good amount of sugar in fruit, and so the timing of fruit intake is key. When we eat carbohydrates, carbohydrate being essentially glucose or sugar, when we eat carbohydrates, we see a spike in our blood sugar. There's then a subsequent spike in insulin reacting to that blood sugar spike, and if that spike is really big and there's a big insulin spike, that's when we get that sugar crash. When we eat raw vegetables and we get our carbs that way, it's sort of like a slow IV drip of carbs throughout the day. All right, they're very slow to digest, and if I eat a bunch of broccoli or cauliflower, it's going to supply me with some good sources of energy slowly throughout a longer period of time, as opposed to if I eat a bowl of Cheerios, I'm going to get that big one spike, that one big carb hit. We want to try to play with this to our advantage in order to maximize our training and maximize our performance. When we talk ingesting carbohydrates or eating carbs, after a workout, after a training session, we can go with a little bit of faster digesting carbs. All right, this is called your glycemic index. A high glycemic index of carbohydrate means that it's going to be digested and absorbed very fast, but it doesn't necessarily last too long, is a good way to think of it, where a low glycemic index food is going to be much slower to digest, and it's going to provide you with a little bit of energy over a longer period of time. After a training session, it's okay to have some of these high GI foods, these fast digesting foods, such as bread or cereal, but in a small quantity. My favorite thing is a banana and an apple, or a banana and an orange right after a workout. That's going to give me, as much as it's fruit and it's going to be a little bit slower to digest than bread or a bagel, it's going to give me a bit more of a rapid, it's a bit higher GI, it's going to give me a bit more quick energy right after the workout. And then I'll follow that up throughout the rest of the day, about every hour and a half or so, with some low GI carbohydrates, so some vegetables or some Greek yogurt or some lentils as well. They'll provide you with lentils are a good low GI food. And this is how we're going to manipulate carbohydrate intake to our advantage, okay? So we don't want one big spike. We can have a little spike after a workout to sort of, basically, when you work out, you're burning carbohydrates. High intensity activity, whether it's sports or lifting or whatever, you're going for sprints or something, you're going for 800-meter runs around a track. High intensity exercise will primarily use carbohydrates as opposed to fat, and so we want to replenish the carbs that we're burning in our body so that we can basically fill our gas tank back up, is a good simple way of thinking about it, okay? And so we can do this with a quick little hit of high GI carbs and then low GI carbs spread throughout the rest of the day. So fats now aren't necessarily the villain that everyone thinks they are. A lot of people try to avoid fat entirely, but it's not going to be conducive to success in any way. There are healthy sources of fat, and our body does need fat. There's something called essential fat, which I believe is 3 to 4%, that it's essentially required for our body to survive. So fat insulates our body organs. Vitamins, there's some vitamins that are water soluble and some that are fat soluble. So if we don't have fat in our body, we literally can't absorb these vitamins that are required for life, really. Fat does provide us with energy. In longer, slower, lower intensity exercise, we can actually use fat primarily as our fuel source. It provides us with insulation so that when you're cold, you don't end up shivering and burning all your energy. You can stay warm. You get stuck out in a blizzard in northern Ontario, you're not going to freeze to death because you got a little bit of fat on you. It's not all bad. When we're eating fat, though, we do need to be careful. So the golden rule with fat consumption is if it's solid at room temperature, try to avoid it. You'll notice that when you cook ground beef for taco night, there's going to be some fats left over in the pan or in the container that you put it in that are going to solidify. That's the fat we want to try to avoid. All right? Typically, animal fats are going to do this. Now, nuts themselves, eating nuts are going to provide you with a good amount of healthy fats, or avocados are one of my favorite things. Avocados will provide you with a good amount of healthy fats, but if we do want to get it through another source, we can go with soybean oil or sunflower oil or fish. You know, you can get some fatty fish that will give you a good source of healthy fats, and these are going to they're going to provide you with our omega-6 and our omega-3 fatty acids. This is what we want. We don't want those saturated fats that come with that, you know, bag of Doritos because the chips are fried in a bunch of canola oil or whatnot. We want healthy fat sources. Salmon, halibut, what else? Trout. These are great options for a bit more fatty fishes as compared to tuna, which has virtually no fat. These are great options that are going to provide you with some healthy fats